Hello everyone, Scantor here, and today I want to talk about something that feels obvious in retrospect, but as I've been working on my own game, it's something that I've been reflecting on that seems obvious in retrospect, but it wasn't obvious in whatever the opposite of retrospect is. Forespect, I guess? So this has to do with skill, the way skills are distributed and sort of managed and to some extent conceptualized. I'm in Guild Wars here because it is particularly useful for demonstration purposes. This is not about Guild Wars, it's a more general game design thing, but this game is very good for demonstrating the sort of thing I'm talking about here and wanting to talk about. So the RPG that I'm making an RPG that's working title is Psychobombs Are Missing in RPG Maker MV. And there's a lot in it that's modeled off of Guild Wars 1 that has a similar sort of structure to the way there's a bunch of different skills and things like that. But the way that you get skills and the way that you manage them and stuff is very different. And it's a lot more open in many regards. Which is where the problem comes in. So what I'm specifically talking about is a sort of cohesion, as it were. So to give a simpler sort of thing, it's basically if you have a lot of skills, how do you make sure that there's a variety of effects, but that there's also cohesion within them? Because one of the things that I'm running into is a problem that I'm realizing with my game is that I need to add more skills, but how do I differentiate things? How do I make sure that things don't become a blob, singular blob? And I don't have a good answer. I just have to try to make sure that designs are different enough. So as kind of a simpler version of this, consider Pokemon for a moment, if you would. So in Pokemon, you have, 17, 19 different types, something around there. And you have a lot of moves that are functionally pretty much the same. Your Ice Beam, your Energy Ball, your Shadow Ball, your Psychic, your Thunderbolt. Like, there's some side effects that they have, but they're all around 80 to 90 power, and they're special moves with, around the, 10 to 15 PP. So they're all fairly similar, but they're all different types. And those different types mean that really matters a lot. And then there's also things of okay, what is an individual Pokemon's moveset? So this means that there's, Energy Ball and Thunderbolt have a lot of overlap in that they're both, super effective against water types, for example. But because the types overall have different, effectivenesses, that means that having a very similar move in a different type is extremely significant. Guild Wars does not do this. Guild Wars has a few damage types, but for the most part, they kind of function the same. So your lightning damage is not super different from your fire damage. There's cases where it matters, but it's not a huge difference. Sometimes the difference between dealing an elemental damage type of earth, cold, fire, or lightning matters compared to a physical type like blunt, piercing, or slashing. Sometimes that matters against certain things, but a lot of the time, even that doesn't matter that much. It's slight edges. The way that things are differentiated in Guild Wars is through sort of the effects going on skills. So if I were to bring up a warrior character here, the effects that this Furious Axe skill has of being energy-based versus Whirling Axe is adrenaline-based, so it's different resources that are being used. There's different other elements that separate skills in this game and dictate what you want to use. And one of the big ones is the attribute lines. So, for example, here on this monk character, which monks are healers in Guild Wars, I have Healing Prayers, which has a bunch of healing skills that directly heal. So, Glimmer of Light just heals an ally. Healing Whisper heals an ally. There's different things that differentiate them. For example, Healing Whisper has half the normal casting range, so you have to be much closer to be able to use it. But it has only a 1-second recharge, which is fairly fast, as opposed to something like the 3-second recharge on Dwayne's Kiss. Yeah, that 2-second recharge difference does matter in this game. It is a real-time game as opposed to turn-based. My RPG is turn-based, but that's not the relevant part. And then there's protection prayers. This has a bunch of other effects. So like Guardian, for example, right here, which is an enchantment you can place on an ally. It's an effect that you can put on an ally that gives them a chance to block attacks, which negates the attack. That's for physical attacks. So like a bow, like arrows or sword slash or whatever. It doesn't affect spells. And there's like Shielding Hands, which reduces the damage that an ally takes. So if they would be hit for like 35 damage, normally this would be reducing around 12 to 15 or so. So it would take that damage off, so it reduces how much damage they take. There's ones that function a little bit more of a healing role, like Reversal of Fortune, which is for 8 seconds. The next time target ally would take damage, they gain health equal to the amount of damage instead, and it caps out at a certain point. But this is something that reverses, so it's kind of like a healing, but it's also not. And so you have these categories of skills, and this is where things really, like the attribute system is another cool thing that I like about this. I'm not going to get into it too much, but basically the effectiveness of your skills is determined by how much you're investing in their given attribute. That's a useful system for it, but I'm talking about at a broader layer of conceptualization. The problem that I'm realizing I'm having with my RPG, or the design challenge, is I don't have a separate concept of categorization of this is something that links these skills together. I have some spells that heal you, some spells that damage enemies. Some spells that apply this sort of effect, some spells that apply that sort of effect. In terms of like supporting an ally to heal them, or supporting an ally by increasing their damage, or different things like that. There's no categories or buckets particularly with the way that things are designed. And it's just one of those things where I'm realizing that is making it difficult to figure out how to design skills, because I don't have this sort of framework. I don't have this conceit to hang things off of in the same sort of way. So, for example, with Guild Wars here, if you're making a new healing prayer spell, it should heal. That's pretty straightforward. In some way, it should be about healing the ally. Maybe you have this weird sort of AoE effect thing, like Healing Ribbon. Maybe it's just a direct heal that's more expensive. Maybe it's a direct heal that's less expensive but less powerful. Maybe it grants the ally health regeneration. These are all ways of healing, but it's focused on restoring health, which is different than what Protection Prayers is. Protection Prayers is predominantly about decreasing the damage the ally is taking. So that can be like removing negative effects from the ally. That can be preventing hits to them, recovering health based on damage, or just straight up reducing damage, capping damage that would be dealt. So there's all of these sorts of effects. There's through lines, there's themes, there's what this attribute line does, there's what this attribute line does. And this creates a design framework for making new skills. So you might have something like this with this warrior. This game has a dual class system where you have a primary class and a secondary class, so there's some stuff going on because of that. But you can see, though, if I scroll up, that you have a bunch of different axe skills that do things that are about what the axe does. And your hammer works a little bit differently if you're going to be using hammer skills. The two weapons don't entirely do the same thing. And likewise, sword is yet again a bit different. And so there's these overarching themes that they're hanging stuff on that provide structure. And you can have this in a bunch of different ways. You can have it based upon how your character class works. You can have it where skills are directly attached to weapons, like Guild Wars 2 does. Guild Wars 2 attaches skills to weapons, so you get thematics going that way. What is this weapon about? If you're wielding a great sword, what does that mean? How does that operate? And so I just am realizing that with the RPG that I've been working on, I'm lacking that sort of structure, and so it's making skills kind of fit into more of an amorphous blob. I think that can work, to be clear, but it does make the design harder. And I just thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about it a little bit and to discuss it. And as I've been thinking through things of like, oh, here's how Pokemon is able to figure out a diversity of skills, through their element system, like centering the elements, meaning that if you have similar seeming skills across different elements, because the elements are so important, those skills have very different functions, very different times when you want to use them. And in Guild Wars, you have the attributes that are designating, like, here's the category of things that these skills do, and it's not just kind of an amorphous collection of skills for the most part. And I thought that was useful to think about, useful to reflect on, and particularly for me, like for future projects especially, how can I have some sort of structure? Like even Magic the Gathering also, it does this with its colors. Like each color has a selection of things that it does that kind of define that color, and I'm lacking some of that definition. So just something that I was reflecting on it and wanted to share. So thank you all very much for watching. And until next time, everyone, take care and goodbye.